Okay. So I have 6:32 on the clock, and so I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to welcome all of you to this training on employment and autism. We're going to be talking about some strategies for success. I'm Jennifer Feinstein, and I am a case manager in the Daniel Jordan Fiddle Foundation Transition and Adult Programs at UM-NSU CARD. Here is my email address. I am going to be sharing this presentation with everyone afterward. We also are recording, so this video will end up on YouTube if you want to watch it again or have some friends or family who may have missed it and weren't able to join us tonight. So thank you so much for joining us. So here's what we're really going to be talking about. It's a little outline. We're going to talk about identifying challenges and strengths of autism spectrum disorder, managing our expectations to set appropriate goals and to have an appropriate job search. And then we're going to be talking about, at the end, navigating community support agencies. The big one, of course, is VR. And everyone always has questions about that. So, so first we're going to talk about the strengths and challenges of ASD and their impact on employment. It's really important to know yourself. So when we're talking about finding a good job, we want to understand all of this about ourselves. Oh, and a quick word that I forgot to mention, we are not going to be having live question and answer. I've got my coworker, Natalie Roman, is going to be monitoring the chat. And if she's able to, she will be answering any of your questions. But also you can always email me after the presentation with any other questions you have, or of course we can have a consultation. So anyway, so let's start out with just a quick overview about autism spectrum disorder. And this training is really geared towards parents. I know we also have some adults, some autistic adults who are watching, parents or caregivers or helpers of adults with autism. So autism spectrum disorder is a complex developmental brain disorder. It emerges during early childhood and often or sometimes is diagnosed. But I do know that a lot of people probably in our audience tonight may have gotten late diagnoses. I meet a lot of people who are diagnosed as an adult. And so it's very common, and it's because it's a complex diagnosis, and it depends on a lot of factors, including how the diagnosis shows itself in you, because everyone is different, but then also the diagnostician's expertise and their experience, and have they studied autism in adults. So anyway, it has a lot of different, there are a lot of different issues that can come up that affect when you're diagnosed. It also, so it significantly impacts social skills, communication, and behavior across a lifetime, which we all know here. We're with adults, and it's definitely obviously considered to be a spectrum. They changed the name to be autism spectrum disorder a few years ago. So this is just a little graph representing the main areas that are affected. So if you just look at the circle, we have the two sort of main areas, which are social communication and interaction, and restricted and repetitive behaviors. And I love this graph because it shows these circles. So you can imagine there are so many different possibilities for any one person. And then that circle that combines the two is where you would see individuals have the diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. And expressive language level can be anywhere along the spectrum. So that's why it's called a spectrum. So we can see in this visual that you can really kind of see where that expressive language could fall, is that some individuals are nonverbal and maybe socially completely isolated. Some people also have maybe intellectually disabled. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you might have somebody who has a lot of language and is very almost verbose, and could be intellectually gifted. So, and then of course, for every person, we run the gamut all the way in between. anywhere in between. And so that's why we have this quote. I'm sure if you've seen us talk before about autism, you've heard this quote, but it's really, if you've seen one person with autism, you've seen one person with autism. So it's very personalized. And so when we think about tonight, some of the challenges and strengths that we're going to talk about, really the purpose of going over these lists that we're going to talk about is really so that you can think about yourself or your adult that you're working with or your family member who has autism. Think about how these impact them. You can even, if you want to make a list, as I'm talking, if you want to make a list of things that you're like, if you're, you know, an autistic adult watching, if you want to make a list of things, wow, that's me, that's me, that's me, then these will help you think about your employment choices as how they relate to your challenges and your strengths, okay? And we want them all to kind of align for the best, for the most success. So, so these are some of the impacts. These are some of those symptoms those autism symptoms, and how they really thinking about them though as how they impact employment. So the first set are about communication. So many autistic people can be very literal in their understanding or in their communicating. So you can see with employment how this might impact you because maybe it's difficult to understand job descriptions. If you're just reading a job description and you tend to think very literally, they can be very confusing. You might misunderstand qualifications. Same thing with interview questions or even what your employer expects of you. And one of the things that we run into very frequently is that most neurotypicals, when they go to a job interview, they know that they are there to sell themselves, right? It's like advertising yourself, why you would be good at this job. But somebody who has this very literal communication style might have a hard time because it might feel like lying, right? And they really value honesty. So maybe that makes it hard. So if that's you, you want to, you know, that's just something to know about yourself and to think about when you do go to job interviews. The same thing might have trouble fitting in. So if you're somebody who, you know, communicating or social communication, like small talk is very stressful, you don't like it, you don't see any point in it, then what might someone think about you at work, a coworker or an employer? You might think that you're aloof. Maybe they think you're just not really interested in making friends. But on the inside, you might be very interested. Also, maybe you might have too much interaction. And so I think, you know, you might talk too much. Do you talk about things that are interesting to you? And do you have a hard time finding out if those things are interesting to other people? So those things can be can really impact employment. And maybe you have social anxiety and your anxiety increases around others, and you can really see how that might impact employment decisions and maybe what kind of environment you want to work in. So also some of the things that also can impact you are, do you have difficulty interpreting nonverbal cues or even noticing nonverbal cues? So maybe it's hard to judge, when can I ask my boss a question? Is this a good time? Because you sometimes have to go by what's nonverbal, not what they're saying. And then also, this is another thing that we talk about a lot when we do our job training series is social filtering. So if you're somebody who tends to just say what you're thinking without filtering it first, that can get you in trouble at work. And if you get emotional and you don't use your social filter, you might say something that you regret and could impact whether you lose your job or not. So those are things that happens. So then as far as the restricted repetitive behavior and interest part, sometimes some individuals on the spectrum really have sort of all or nothing thinking. So maybe you have trouble seeing different options or seeing how there might be a rule, but then sometimes there's an exception to a rule in employment. That might lead you to repeat things that aren't working for you. So those can get in the way. Sometimes individuals, this restricted interest can lead you to focus on too few details or maybe the wrong details about a job. And then, of course, if you are very rigid and not very flexible, that can make things really difficult to adapt to that when there is change. Do you have a new supervisor? Is there a new job? Has someone added on a job into your job description that you didn't have before? Coworkers, you know, cubicles, new settings, you know, that can make it difficult. And in employment, things change, and sometimes we have to be flexible, and so that makes things difficult. So then there definitely are sensory impacts to ASD. So many individuals are hypersensitive. So think about the work environment. Are things going to distract you if they're in your visual field? Are you sensitive to sounds, smells? Do tactile things bother you? And then another part of your sensory issues could be auditory processing. So this can impact, you know, maybe do you have difficulty following group conversations, processing verbal information? So do you need things in writing, or do you need visuals to help you process them? So those are some aspects you might want to think about. And this one is interesting too, because this can impact an interview, is if you struggle with dual track processing, which means maybe listening to someone in an interview, if it's a one-on-one, and making eye contact at the same time. And, you know, an interview is that social interaction. They expect you to be looking at them because that tells them that you are paying attention. And so that can be difficult. And then also listening and typing information to a database is another example of that. And so you might think about that when you're thinking of a job type, if that's really difficult for you to multitask. So you might choose to avoid jobs that involve a high amount of multitasking. Okay, so then there's just some other challenges, and this is a big one, executive functioning challenges, which really can affect your ability to organize. We really see a lot of difficulty knowing how to begin a task or how to end a task. And then, of course, if you're having trouble organizing, beginning, ending, you might run into time management problems. So executive functioning challenges are things that you need to know about yourself. Do you have these issues? And they are things that you can mitigate and you can accommodate. So you can there are actually executive functioning coaches who can help you. There are many personal reminders and calendars you can use and things you can do, you know, to help you with the impact of executive functioning challenges. Emotional control is another big issue. Many people on the spectrum have difficulty handling frustration. And it goes back to some of the other things that we talked about, where being rigid, having trouble with change, and then of course anxiety. And anytime our anxiety levels are high, everything else kind of suffers as well. So when you're thinking about your employment plan or your employment search, or whether you're ready for a job, you want to think about how all of these challenges, how do they impact you and your ability? So some of them might be things you might want to work on before you get a job. Maybe you want to see a counselor for your anxiety or take medication. Maybe you want to, you know, work through some emotional control, because we all have negative emotions, but it's what we do with them that counts. And so if we get upset at our employer and we send out a nasty email, or we call, or we say something inappropriate, then we could get fired. Whereas if we can just keep it inside and then go talk to someone about it, maybe we would be okay. So those are the challenges. And again, it's a long list, and I'm not saying them, I'm not telling you all them so that you feel discouraged or like you'll never get a job because there's so many challenges going against you. I just want, we all have challenges. And so we all want to know ourselves so that we can choose the best career or the best job for what that balances out our challenges and our strengths. So we're going to talk about our strengths. And a good job will allow your strengths to shine through. And so we know that autistic individuals have a lot of strengths that are awesome in a workplace. And again, we're going to remember the quote, everyone is different, right? It's a huge spectrum. So you need to play to your own strengths. So not every person with autism has all of these strengths. So attention to detail is one that many individuals on the spectrum have. Many autistic individuals are very accurate and can be very task focused. That's an excellent skill to bring to a job. Long-term memory can be a big strength. And, sometimes you could get into an organization where they really value that strength, and you might remember things that no one else remembers on the job. Some individuals don't mind repetition, and actually, because they like to know what to expect and know how to, what's going to happen, they might like repetition. And so where maybe someone else might get bored, some individuals are going to really thrive and, really be a champ at a job that has repetition. Logic and analytic skills. Again, some individuals really have the ability to see patterns in data, and so they can really make those great specialists in dealing with data and looking at patterns. In general, individuals with autism are rule-oriented, and so that, somebody who wants to follow the rules and is not looking to cut the corners is going to make a great employee. You're going to be doing the job right. Honesty and loyalty. So, many times individuals on the spectrum will tell the truth. And, sometimes that is hard, makes trouble, like I talked about before, if you're not using your social filter, if the truth comes out and it hurts. But in general, being honest and being loyal make a wonderful employee and an excellent long-term employee. You're going to be around for a long time. Creative thinking. Look, not everyone thinks the same. And if everyone's brains work the same, nobody would have different ideas. So you might be, individuals with autism can be those out-of-the-box thinkers. Their brain can maybe look at some information in a different way and come up with a different solution, which can really help on a team. And then they really persevere. So I know a lot of individuals, like, once they're assigned a task, they want to get that task done and they want to do it right. And again, so many individuals really enjoy developing their knowledge base and learning information. So, you might be a specialist. So you might develop in-depth knowledge in a small, limited area. But if you can combine that into a career that matches your skills, then you would make an excellent specialist. Many individuals have advanced vocabularies and really the ability to communicate technical information that not everyone is able to communicate. In general, people with ASD are visual processors. So that is actually a tremendous strength, because not only might you work well with like visual information or design, but also it tells you something that actually might help you on your job, is to keep in mind, if you're a visual processor, what do you need as a support to help you do your job? You might need visuals, but those are something that are actually really quite simple to make and can actually increase your success. And then in general, people are very conscientious and really want to do things the right way. So now we took all those challenges, that long list of challenges, and we've taken that wonderful list of strengths. And so we want to kind of like, put those together and look at what might be a good career match or the type of job we might want to have. So what we want to do is take into account all of these areas: your interests, your abilities, the work environment, and the impact of autism. So that was all those challenges that we talked about, and try to wrap them all up to find the right type of career, the right type of job that might fit you. Because again, we're all so different, and we all might fit in different areas on this little chart here. Some people tend to think somebody has an interest because many individuals with autism spectrum disorder have a special interest, right? A special topic. And I think many times parents can make the mistake of only looking at that. And so that might make you think of, you know, taking your interest and, okay, we're going to go to school for that, and then we're going to have a career for that. But sometimes your abilities don't always match up with those interests. And I'm going to give you an example. My son is autistic. He's 24. And one of his interests that he's always really loved is history, geography, the social studies. And he's super knowledgeable. He loves that kind of information. He was really good at school. He actually went to college and graduated from college. So, but as he was growing up, you know, my husband and I would always say, oh, he would make a great professor, right? Because he loves telling you about those interests and telling you the information. And he really has a huge fund of knowledge. And he can analyze things too as well. So got those interests. So we go, oh, he makes a professor. So, okay, so let's say history professor. But then if you look at his abilities and you think about what the abilities are of a professor, yes, you need to share that information verbally. Okay, he can do that. But generally, to be a college level professor, you also need to do a great deal of writing. In fact, many times there's competitive research that you have to participate on, and you have to publish, you have to be published. So that's not in his wheelhouse. Like, he is a good writer, but not with things that other people want him to write. So another thing is you might have to tolerate college kids. And guess what? My son has never been very good at tolerating college kids. And so if you're a professor and somebody asks a dumb question and you think it's a really stupid question, you cannot tell them that, you know, a student. You will get in trouble. You are there to teach young people and lift them up. And so I think that part would not be a good match. And today you get ratings for, you know, professors have ratings. The environment, so if I'm considering, so already I had interest was good, abilities is like, and then environment, standing, you know, but it's generally inside and air conditioning. So for my son, that's okay. But he does have sensory issues. So he's sensitive to sounds and smells. So when I'm just imagining large, you know, crowds of sweaty, you know, freshmen coming into the classroom, it makes me think maybe not. And so then the impact of the ASD, which is, you know, maybe his social filter doesn't work that great all the time. He has a low tolerance of things that he considers, you know, that he doesn't like. So all in all, even though he had the interest, that would not be a great career for him to go into. So there you go. So we ruled that one out. So anyway, so now, so you want to, you know, consider all those things, your interests, the abilities, your challenges that you have with your strengths, and the environment. Of course, environment's a big one, people forget. And then you want to, like, see what you're interested in, assess your abilities. This is a great free website. It's really based on ONET, which is from the Department of Labor. And ONET has a huge library of careers and jobs by industry. And it pretty much anything you could ever imagine is in their database. And it gives you information about the salary, the prospects, the education that you might need, the skills that you might need to have, what type of personality does best in those roles. So it's really fun if you're a person, or if any of you are thinking about a career, not sure what you're interested in, thinking about if you want to do school or need education, this is a great place to start. And so over here, where it says, tell us what you like to do, it actually starts an assessment that is based on this John Holland's personality styles. So when you take this assessment, you will end up getting numbers based on whether you like activities that are more realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, or conventional. And it'll give you the numbers, and so then you take which ones you score the top 3, you know, your top highest scores, and then you can use it, and it will actually search for you based on your results. It'll search the careers and give you suggestions based on levels of education as well. So you can search in many different ways. So it's really helpful, and I highly recommend it for doing that kind of career assessment. So now that you've thought about yourself, you've thought about the impacts, what your strengths are, what kind of abilities you have, what kind of environment, maybe you've done those assessments, you kind of want to put it all together. And I think it's just really important to remember that we all have challenges, so the key to being successful is to understand yourself. That's part of being an adult, and find a job that can highlight your strengths, right? So you want to either, be mitigating or accommodating your challenges. So you're going to figure out which ones do you need to work on. Do you need to go to therapy first or concurrently? Do you need a life coach to help you with some of those challenges? And then, of course, accommodations can be had if you disclose your disability. Some challenges, you'll need accommodations, and maybe you will always need to have your instructions in writing. Like maybe that's an accommodation you're going to want. But when you think about it in that way, it can help you figure out what kind of jobs to apply for. And I really want to encourage all of you, especially parents or helpers, try to not set artificially high expectations. And this is hard because as parents, we feel like we don't want to set limits, right? We don't want to say, we like to say to any of our kids, whatever their challenges are, we like to say, you can be anything you want, the sky's the limit. But if you think about, like if I said to my son, because he's so smart, let's say, and he went to college, that he should have a very professional job where it requires a high level of, being empathetic with other people and starting projects on his own and being self-motivated, that might not really be possible for him. Sorry about the dogs. So if he doesn't achieve that goal that I've set, then he might have a sense of failure, even though it's just something that I had this thought that he should be in a professional job. So if you set your goals too high, you can lead to failure. So we don't want to do that. We want to have appropriate expectations based on all of our challenges and all of our strengths. Okay, so okay, sorry about that. Seems like it muted me. So anyway, we just want to be realistic about our goals. We don't want to set artificially high goals. We don't want to limit too much. So then we also put it together, and we want to look at, when you went through and you heard those challenges and you look at your adult, or if you are an autistic adult, what kind of employment is going to be the best fit for you? Okay, competitive employment is what we call, there's different types of employment. So competitive employment is what we call just regular employment, where you're going to apply for jobs and just with everyone else in the labor market. You're going to apply, you're going to have an interview, and you might get the interview or not get the interview. That's called competitive employment. Supported employment has different levels, but supported employment is where you're going to need some support from an agency or a person in order to either get the job or in order to keep the job. So that's where sometimes you might work with an employment specialist if you get placed in a job, or you might bring a job coach with you to work, and that's also known as supported employment. And then a higher level support is customized employment. It's also called job carving. So customized employment and job carving is where you have somebody who maybe, depending on the impacts of their autism symptoms might need a specialized carved job. So maybe they're not going to be able to read it, go to a regular job listing and just do all the different, jobs that are there, but maybe they can specialize and do one aspect of a job. And so that will require either through networking, through your family, or an employment coach, a job coach, or an employment specialist actually working with a company to carve out a position based for that person. Okay. All right. So, so this next part is really also about managing expectations and setting goals, but really about the job search process. Okay. So, really, when you're helping an autistic adult set their goals, I like to say that you need to have the 3 Ps. Okay. So you need to be patient, practical, and positive. And I know it's a lot. We are speaking to the parents. You are a parent of an adult, and sometimes it's difficult when, maybe you have some expectations that by the time you're age whatever, you should be able to do X on your own. So that's not always the case. And I think that if you can manage that expectation so that you're getting rid of the shoulds, like don't should shame, as I said there, under the practical. Don't say, you're 25, you should be able to do X, okay? Everyone needs support. Everyone has different challenges. And frankly, we all need help in our lives, whether we are neurotypical or autistic. So these are things you might need to do to support your autistic adult. And of course, it's difficult. It's overwhelming. Finding a job, just talking about the job searching process right now is overwhelming and can take a long time and have a lot of failure, okay? And then positive, we're gonna talk about language, and we're gonna talk about watching our language too. So, so the first one is patience, all right? So help your adult, and all of your adults out there who are also watching me, be patient with yourself, okay? You wanna set realistic goals. So I can't tell you the number of times we've worked with adults in our job seekers program or in job club, and they say, my dad says I have to apply for 20 jobs a day. So I do not recommend that. We do not recommend that. You wanna go for quality over quantity. If you think that there's a certain number of jobs someone should apply for to make them have a good job search, then that probably says to me that you have not searched for a job in a really long time. It is difficult, it's frustrating. You want to be finding jobs that you're actually qualified for and that you would like to do. If you read, I encourage you, if you haven't done this, if you're helping an adult get a job and you have not been looking at job listings yourself, I encourage you to do this. The language is, in some of them, is super verbose, like long lines of language. So we don't want to set a number that they have to apply for. We want them to apply for actual jobs they could get. Also, don't say finding a job should be a full-time job. Have you heard that saying? It's a common saying, I think, especially for somebody, let's say, if you need money, and if some of you live independently and you need money to support yourself or to support a family, then you might want to dedicate as much time as you could. But the problem with the idea that you might spend 8 hours a day searching for jobs is that if you've been on these websites, the jobs are all posted online, and you might go on today and see a lot of jobs. Well, once you apply for them, you can't apply for them again. So then tomorrow you might go back and there aren't any new jobs. It's not like 20 new jobs pop up every day. So those kind of like blanket statements you should try to avoid. All they're gonna do is lead to frustration and maybe feeling also like a failure. and probably are going to increase anxiety and lead to procrastination or avoidance. So remember that this does increase anxiety and it is overwhelming. So maybe help break down their goals into action steps. Okay, so your goal is just get a job. Well, that's a big goal, you know, and it doesn't tell me where to start. So remember, some of those challenges are how to start an activity, right? Starting, ending, how to plan it out, executive functioning struggles. So help them break their goals down into action steps that are manageable. And then also remind everyone, whether you're an adult or a parent, why are you doing this? Why do you want to have a job? What are the benefits? You might need to help remind your adult, like, what are the benefits of this? You know, this sucks, frankly, looking for jobs all the time. It's hard. And if there's a lot of failure, like there's a lot of times you're going to apply for jobs and never hear back. You'll never hear back. And that's normal. So why are you doing this? You might need to remind them. Maybe your adult needs other rewards. You know, maybe that idea of having a job so they can buy their own video games, maybe that's too far away for them. Maybe they need something more, like more current for them in their lives. So maybe there are some rewards that you can assess what will help them feel good about their job search and keep going and stay motivated. And then you want to reward the effort. You know, many people, you know, if I was looking for a job, I would be happy because I would get a job, right? If I get a job, that's when I have my reward. But that's a lot of effort for very little reward at the end. And especially somebody, if you're talking about your first job, or if you've only had negative employment experiences, just trying and waiting for your reward at the end, that can be very frustrating. So I would say reward the effort as they go along, okay? Not just the success. Okay, so the other P was practical. So these are all areas where an autistic adult might need your help or might need some help. And some of these are things that I do. So anyone in the audience can contact me and I can help look at your resume, let's say. But when you're doing an active job search, you need to do a lot of these things every day, maybe. So I'm a professional that I can't be with you every day. So I'm not there at home to help you read a job listing. Some of your adults might actually need help reading through the job listing and understanding what they're saying, what they're asking, and understanding, do my qualifications fit in with this job? It can be complicated. The other thing I want to point out about the resume is it says there, preparing and tailoring a resume. So some of you parents, if you haven't searched for a job in a long time, you may not have heard this this word before, but it really means that the best chances of success, this is what all the experts tell us, are to tailor our resume for each job. So that might mean that you can't just like make a resume and upload it to all these jobs. You might want to go into your resume and add wording from the job description into your resume because it is competitive and you're trying to get a job out there. So help them understand. You have to use keywords to search for jobs online. So what keyword is going to turn up the job you want, right? The keyword is what tells the computer what you're looking for. You have to know what words to use. You might need to help them problem solve if they put in keywords and they find too many jobs that there's like 1,000 hits. You know, what should they do? They might need help navigating some of the systems, the online systems. Of course, reading and understanding, and then organizing. I have a chart that I'm going to show you on the next page, but to really have a good job search, you kind of need to organize. You need to know, what job did you apply for? You need the link. If you get called for an interview, you want to go back to that job listing to see what they were looking for. You need to know what you're applying for when if you show up for an interview. Also, networking. This is a big one. Do you all know the most common way that people get jobs? It's through knowing somebody. It's through networking. So, you know, many people have a hard time with that, but I would say as a family member, help them network, you know, help use your contacts and your connections to help them get a job. Everyone's doing it for all their kids. So your kid shouldn't be any different. And then, of course, preparing for interviews and deciding whether they need to or want to disclose their disability and when. So the disclosure decisions, I have a previous training. It's on our YouTube channel, which you can look at when we're done if you want more information about disclosure decisions. So this is a really cool interactive job tracker. This is a link to it. It uses Google Drive. So it's really cool, but you can set up your own spreadsheet or make a simple table if you want to. But the basic information you want, the company, the job posting, include a link to the job posting, the date you found the job, did you apply, what date, did you research the company, okay? Because if we're gonna talk about interviews, that's the step before the interview. You have to research the company. Did you send a follow-up email, what date, all that information. So, so you can just see from looking at all this information that a job search, a successful job search has a lot of parts and it needs a level of organization. And you can see why an executive functioning challenge will make this even more difficult. So the final one, the final P for helping your adult is really to be positive. If you look at this graphic that I included, anyone who's been to therapy might know this graphic. This is called the cognitive triad. But really what it's saying is I need you to watch your language. As I said, finding a job can be frustrating, overwhelming. I mean, just talking about that other page that we had about all the help that your adult might need, I mean, that feels overwhelming to me. And it can be anxiety provoking. So also, like I said, you might apply to a bunch of jobs and not hear back. And how does that make you feel? So I'll tell you, like you're failing. Like it might feel like you're constantly failing. So definitely our autistic adults need regular praise. They need positive reinforcement. That's like maybe those rewards, if you can come up with some good rewards. You need to monitor your adults' anxiety. Adults, you need to monitor your own anxiety levels. And this is where it's really important to understand this cognitive triad and how your thoughts, feelings, and behavior can impact you. So you're going to have whatever feelings, right? You might feel like a failure, or maybe you feel anxious. So no, I can't just tell you can't tell your adult, don't feel bad. You'll find a job eventually. Like that doesn't usually help people. As soon as someone tells me like, I need to calm down or don't feel so anxious, I'm like, what? I'm anxious. So you have your feelings, and then those feelings might lead you to certain thoughts, right? I can't do this. This is stupid. I'm never going to find a job. Like I suck. I'm never going to find a job. I'm never going to be success. And then those thoughts might lead to what behavior? Well, maybe you're going to quit. Maybe you're going to procrastinate because it's so uncomfortable. And then if you quit, how will you feel? More of a failure, even worse. You'll have like, oh, I'm really a loser, or I feel so sad now. And so you can see how this triad has this interplay that can get you stuck in this negative loop. So what it's really important to do is replace your negative thoughts. And so I think that's where, as a parent or as a caregiver, you can really help your adult, because it's not easy. It's really not easy when you're the one. It's not easy to replace your negative thoughts. So you can help. And you don't have to jump straight from, I can't do this, to like, I can do it, I'm the best. But you can go in something in between. So you can say, you know what, it's taking a long time, but I'm gonna keep trying. Maybe this job will be the one. Maybe there's some things I can do differently, and maybe if I call Jennifer at Card, she can help me come up with some new strategies. And so then you can see, if you have that thought, you might call Jennifer, right? Or maybe you'll apply for another job, and then your feelings are gonna be like maybe a little more positive. And then also as parents, I know we have adults on here too, but as parents, monitor your own anxiety, because that, even though we're talking, this is about the adult's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, yours on the inside and what you say can also affect your adult, okay? And they can affect their success. So I hope that all made sense to everyone, and like, whew, it's a lot. And anyone who has done job searches, gone on interviews, you know, done all these things knows that it is anxiety provoking and it is difficult, but you can be successful and you can be smart about it. And I know that you really, you know, you guys are some awesome people out there with a lot of strengths to offer. So you just have to keep trying and find what's the right fit for you. And I know it's out there. So, so that brings us to community support agencies. And, you know, when you have a disability, autism is a disability, you might want to get some outside help. Excuse me. So the big one here is the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation. So VR is what I'm gonna say. And VR is really the big game, and it's a funding source. So I'm gonna go over what they do, because I want everyone to really understand there's an art, let's say, to dealing with VR successfully. So I wanna help all of you really understand what it is they do and what they don't do, and how to get the most out of them and how to deal with them, frankly. So their mission is to help people with disabilities find and maintain employment or advance in their career and enhance their independence. So all these quotes are directly from their materials. I want you to know. So the purpose helps eligible individuals with physical or mental disabilities find, get, or keep a better job. So that's what they do. So we know, can you let her out, please? Thanks. So you may be eligible for VR services. And again, they say maybe. So that just tells you they're going to have some eligibility requirements there. You have a physical or mental disability. It results in a significant barrier to employment, and you need their services to get or keep a job. Okay, so they are the funding source. So a lot of people, when I work with clients and I mention maybe you should contact VR, they're like, I don't want to go work with them. I've heard they suck, or like they didn't help me, you know, whatever. And sometimes I think what that means is that you don't quite understand what VR is. VR is just a funding source. So yes, they have people called counselors that you will work with. And those counselors are involved with helping you make a plan. We're going to go through all of that. But really, it's a federal funding that goes through every state. So it's state funding. So VR is not necessarily going to give you the direct services. Like, that's not going to be your job coach, the people at VR. So you really only have to deal with the actual VR counselors when you're coming up with a plan and asking them to pay for things for you. Okay, so they're gonna pay for things that are necessary for your employment goal. Now, your goal is decided on with your counselor, and it's based on assessments. So they might collect your assessments or send you for an assessment. This is important down here. Both you and your counselor need to agree on the goal. So sometimes you can see there's an area where maybe you think you want something for your adult, and VR counselor disagrees. So there can be times of disagreement, okay? You know, the other thing to keep in mind is that every counselor is different. So not every counselor at VR has expertise in autism. So they might not understand what your adult needs, you know? You might have a brand new counselor, or you might have a counselor who's been there for a very long time. So we're gonna talk about what to do when you disagree. Okay, it's also really important, and I think the people that are the least satisfied with their VR experience are the people who don't know what is possible. So they don't know really what to ask for. So this is direct from their handbook of services. So if you see up here, when you get this PowerPoint, this is a link, and it'll take you to their handbook of services. That's what they call it. So not everyone knows about this, but this is an excellent brochure. It has a lot of their policies listed, and it tells you exactly what the procedure is going to be like, and then what to do if you disagree. So I wanted to print out, this is directly from there. I just want to highlight, so it tells you the steps here. I want to highlight here, they're going to make an eligibility decision. Okay, so they have to, you go in and you say, I have autism, it's my disability, and I want employment help. So they're going to, they might ask you to submit any documentation you have, and most likely, it says here, if you do not have current information, your counselor will help you get the needed evaluations at no cost to you. So, for instance, with my son, when he was going into college, the first thing they did was they sent him for a psychoeducational evaluation. So many of you might know that getting a psychoeducational evaluation can cost, if you have to pay for it, which most people do have to pay, can cost on the market $3,000 to $5,000. So VR is going to pay for it. Now, what we found at CARD is we have a list of some psychologists who are VR vendors. That's the key. Every service has to be provided by someone who is a VR vendor. Okay, so that's where we're not sure if all of the psychologists have autism expertise, but you can please reach out to your case manager, because we do try to keep a list of psychologists who have given us, you know, excellent tests, submitted excellent tests. But anyway, so that right there, to me, can be really worth it. You can have an evaluation for free that might have cost you $5,000. So this is just the final, you know, steps. And when you look at that brochure, when you go online, you can look in more detail. But I do want to talk about case closure for a second. After you have worked for 90 days, you will discuss ending VR help. Okay, so you have to both agree that you no longer need VR services. So there's like a little gray area there, but it does say, even if they close your case, if you need help in the future to keep your job or get a different job if you lose it, you should contact them for additional services. So they don't close the door on you. These are some examples. This is straight from their website, but it's really important for you to know this. My first time I went to VR, the lady said to me, the counselor said to me, what do you want? And this was like before I worked at CARD. I was like, I don't know, what do you do here, you know? So it's maybe a little off-putting and seems strange to you, but the best thing you can do to help your adult is, number one, go with them, help them out, because there's a lot of high-level communication that has to go on, but also be educated on what you want from them, okay? What do you want? What do you think your adult needs to be successful? So they can do evaluation and planning, career counseling and guidance, job coaching, job placement, so that's putting you in a job, on-the-job training and education after high school. They might go do some job site assessment and help with accommodations on the job site. They do supported and customized employment, assistive technology, medical and psychological assessment, and look at this, time-limited medical and or psychological treatment. You can get that in your IPE. So that's what the plan is called, an IPE. So important to know all of these details. So this is like another little chart, and this is how I like to think about it. So you're going to go to VR. It's the money source, right? That's what you're going there for, money. They are going to give you an assessment and evaluation in order to write your IPE, individual plan for employment. That's where you are going to be, you work with your counselor to put in that plan all the services that you need, and then they can pay for all of these different services. And we always encourage people to think about, even though their goal is employment, maybe therapy and mental health treatment is the first step. You know, if you need some help in those areas, that might be your first step. And of course, post-secondary education could be training programs, could be college. They can pay for that. Pre-employment training services, they have some of those. And then this one, well, first of all, on-the-job training is where VR actually pays a company. They set it up for you so that they will pay the company to pay you to have on-the-job training for a certain amount of time. And the hope is that you can, the benefits of on-the-job training, or OJT as they call it, is that you learn the job. Do you like that environment? You get a chance to kind of observe, and then they kind of hope that the employer once they've gotten to know you and seen, you know, how great you are, they might actually want to hire you. So it happens for some people and some people it doesn't, but it gets to go on your resume. So it's a good experience. And then the other thing people don't always know about, they can give you practical help like transportation and clothing allowances. If you need a wardrobe for, you know, like a professional wardrobe. So, okay, so you made your IPE with your counselor, and this happens all the time, believe it or not. So I didn't know about this when I first went to VR, but if you disagree with your VR counselor, and again, this is language straight from that handbook, so you will find this right there. I basically copied and pasted and cleaned it up a little. These are your steps. First step is your counselor's supervisor, and I will say, many supervisors that I have met are excellent. They're knowledgeable. They have dealt with many different scenarios. And so sometimes they're generally gonna have more knowledge than the counselors. That's a generalization. Some counselors are incredibly knowledgeable. So supervisor is the first step. And many times, whatever, you know, your issue is, you can resolve with the supervisor. And we have done that before. I've helped constituents do that before. The next one is their ombudsman office, which is an impartial service available to anyone who has questions or concerns or didn't get the services they expected. There's a number and an email address. And then the final is run by the Disability Rights Florida, and it's called the Client Assistance Program. And they have advocates there who can help you if you feel like you're not getting your services that you deserve from VR. So beyond VR, all the money comes from VR, right? We talked about that. And then there's different employment specialists and training opportunities throughout Miami-Dade and Broward. These are just some of the names. Many people get help from the Marino Foundation. They have employment training as well as then follow up with maybe some job placement and some job coaching. The Demoya Foundation, ARC, of both Broward and South Florida, Best Buddies, Goodwill Industries. ICANN and Work Opportunities are both employment specialists that we've met through our work with people. And then some places in the community have had internships for people with ASD or with disabilities, really. So Baptist Health has an internship called Aspire every year. Miami Children's, that's actually supposed to say Miami Children's Museum, sorry, not Miami Children's Hospital. And WLRN, South Florida PBS station, has done internships with us. A word right now during COVID, okay? Everyone, and I know it's really hard as parents when you have adults, we're all stressed out. Many of us are at home together more than we ever have been before. But everyone needs to know that right now we all have to have extra patience. You know, unemployment is still very high. These internships, I'll just tell you right now, these internships all are not going on right now. So they didn't want to have that extra liability of having someone who's an intern as opposed to an employee. I've heard from many of our, agencies where half of their people were furloughed due to COVID. So now they have, these employment specialists have people who are, still supposed to be receiving services from them, but that are out of work. So I think we all just need to have extra patience with our adults and with ourselves and with the community right now. But we're all hopeful that things are going to clear up as soon as possible for everyone. So a couple of resources in here. When you look through this, I will email this to everyone who registered. So the Autism Speaks Employment Toolkit is actually excellent. So there's a link there. Barbara Bissonette is a woman who's written several books and for guides, and I really have enjoyed some of her books, and I've also recently done a training from her. The VR handbook is here that I was doing. This is the ONET resources from the Department of Labor. We didn't talk a lot about disclosure today because I've done that training before, which is on our YouTube channel, but askjan.org, so that's the Job Accommodation Network, a ton of information, a huge library of disclosure and accommodations resources. And then I just included some, a lot of information. If you're helping someone find a job, you just need to start Googling stuff. So you can Google common interview questions for them. You can actually Google by career. So you could type in the Google search common interview questions for teachers, let's say, as an example. And then these are some of our favorite YouTube channels that we use in our job seekers program. And of course, don't forget to contact your card case manager for more help or for more information. So I also, really quickly, before I stop recording, I want to just point out that Tropical Nights is our big fundraiser, and we have had state budget cuts due to COVID, just like almost everyone throughout the state has had. And so Tropical Nights used to be an in-person gala, but this year we're doing this really fun person-to-person fundraising. So if any of you are so inclined, if you would like to, you can actually right now click on this link while I have this page here, and it'll take you to our fundraising page. You can create a team. If you want to fundraise yourself, you can create a page. We have a team, the Daniel Jordan Fiddle Foundation Adult Programs team. So if anyone wants to click on become an ambassador and then join a team, when it'll take you through the setup process, please join our team. We would love to have you. Or if you don't want to do all that and you just want to make a donation, you can just click a button. There's a button when you get to this link, there's a button that says make a donation. So you can totally do that. And of course, no pressure. You don't have to give money to us. Everything we do is state funded and it's free. And we do it really because we love it. So our mission at CARD is probably I know on my team, it's our mission in our hearts. So we love what we do. And then finally, if you all don't mind, this is a survey. I will also send out the link following the presentation when it's done, but if you can click on do the QR code with your phone if you want, or click the link. It's a survey about this training. We really appreciate it. It helps us, improve for the future. And that's it. I want to thank everyone. I think we're just at an hour. Thank you so much for attending, and good luck. And please do reach out to me if you have any questions or need individual help. I'm always here for you. And so that's it. How do I?